to a mixed group like this is, as I started to think about it after I was asked to come, quite a challenge because good worship is developed in a particular place, among a particular people. There's no such thing as the perfect worship service for every UU church. There's not even the perfect worship service for every Methodist or Episcopal or Catholic or Jewish congregation. Architecture affects worship. So does congregational history, congregational goals and sense of mission, the music available, the staff available, and their specific talents. Innumerable other things affect worship. So we are not going to construct the perfect worship service for everybody here, because that's really not, it would not be wise for us to try and do that. Instead, what I hope to do is to give you some things to put in your imaginary backpack to take home with you, back to your congregation, back to your own worship committees and staff and leadership, so that you can talk about things that will help you to develop the perfect worship service for your place. In this changing world, we need some new tools, right? And some new ways to think about what constitutes good worship. And so I'm making only one assumption. You come from big congregations and small congregations and urban and rural and so on and so forth. My one assumption about you and your congregations may be a challenge for some of you, but I'm going to go ahead and make it. I assume that you want your congregation and its liberal values and core to last through this century. Are you with me on that? Okay. So I'm talking about backpacks rather than briefcases, because a lot more people carry backpacks and briefcases, especially Unitarian Universalists who will be Unitarian Universalists in the middle of the century, who are now emerging adults and young adults. I'm talking backpacks instead of shopping bags, because backpacks are carried across cultural divides, and we have to cross those cultural divides if we want to be successful. I'm talking backpacks because backpacks span the divide between our serious life, our work life, our school life, our everyday life, and our connection to nature, our recreational life, our relationship to our children and their backpacks. Backpack is kind of a holistic carrier for a holistic life. But you know, there are some congregations across the theological spectrum that begin every school year, the Sunday before or after the first week of school, with a blessing of backpacks. And they bring the children up in their backpacks, and they put them in a row, and they bless those backpacks and the books and the pencils and so on in them to the work of education in the children's lives. And bless the children while they're at it. I give you that as a possible thing to take home. There are a million kinds of backpacks in the world, everything from polished executive types to military types, the kind that will hold exactly your camera, all that sort of thing. But we're going to picture the kind of school-style backpack like this. You've got a copy of that backpack in your handouts for those of you who think visually and want to take notes by circling things in the pictures. You can do that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the backpack itself, which we will spend the morning packing up with some tools for you to take home and use to create more compelling, deep, winsome worship in your home congregation. You get each a backpack because you're all worship leaders and you're all worship participants, every one of you. You're worshipers, you're all worshipers, and you're all leaders of worship, even if you never stand behind the pulpit or get up here on the platform or in the chancel or whatever you think of the space in your congregation. Because participation and leadership in worship are a continuum, not one thing and another thing. Every participant in worship has some leadership. Just think about the leadership of the screaming 2-year-old. Everybody in that worship service she's got their attention, right? And they are all hoping that she gets what she needs soon. Leadership, right? The participant in worship who sings, or who at least holds the hymn book and reads along, who follows the instructions for the meditation, who listens, that participant is exerting leadership on everyone around them. If you're here at this workshop on worship, therefore, I hope you will consider yourself one of the leaders of worship in your congregation, even if you would never dream of speaking from the pulpit. And the ones who are in the chancel at the pulpit are at work during the worship service, and that changes the worship experience for them, no doubt about that. But especially once we have some experience, we who do this for a living, there are also times in each service in which we can benefit from what is happening in the worship service, in spite of the fact that we're also leading it. So we're also participating, we ministers and lay worship leaders. So I speak to each of you in your two roles this morning, your role as one who participates in worship and your role as someone who leads worship. Also, you're all leaders in your congregation. You wouldn't be here on this beautiful Saturday morning if you weren't. So when we talk about longing for a higher quality worship service, the kind that can sustain UUs through change and attract new UUs so that this institution grows through the generations, we're talking about shifts that we will experience as participants in worship, and shifts we will need to actually lead, and shifts that we will experience, and shifts that we will have to be a part of making in terms of dealing with budgets and leadership and committees, and things that have to be explained to others, and people who have to be soothed into being a part of the change we long for. And that's all the job of leadership. So every single one of you has a backpack. So let's fill it up. First thing that any good college student would put in her backpack would have to be a dictionary. Now I know that the first thing you thought of was a book. You're expecting me to show a book up there, but a big book, right? Dictionary. But no, our modern college student does not use a paper dictionary, right? She uses a Kindle, or her iPad, or even an app on her phone, of course. Now I know that many of you love the feel of a dictionary and how the pages turn and how the book smells, but I hope you will not argue with me when I say that an electronic item can also be a dictionary, and it's perfectly legitimate to use an electronic dictionary if you need to know how to pronounce a word, okay? Because definitions change. The definitions of words change as technology changes, among other things, or as the years go by, or as the needs of the verbal community changes. The definitions of words need to change from community to community. Remember that. So our dictionary this morning is going to have some words in it that we'll need to define: worship, common worship, spirituality, and sanctuary. Now, Unitarian Universalists don't have a creed. We don't force the definitions of words on anybody as a condition of membership. And we don't spend a lot of time on common definitions of religious words because it's okay with us if people differ. We don't need to all mean exactly the same thing when we are talking about God or the afterlife or some of those other very important words, because those signify interior experiences. And it's okay with us if my interior experience is different from your interior experience. But worship, we do that together, right? And because we do it together, it's useful to have some generally shared definitions of what we are doing together. So let me just stop here and take a poll. Raise your hands if you were raised in a UU congregation. Okay? And those of you who were raised in no religious community, therefore UUism is your first, or who were raised in another religious community, raise your hands. Okay. The point being, we're all converts. I know you don't like that word, but we're all converts, right? This happens every place. The overwhelming majority of Unitarian Universalists grew up somewhere else. We've all moved. And when we move to a new community, or a new community of faith, we have to make sure that we learn the subtle ways that words are used differently in our new place. So for instance, in the house that I grew up in, chili. We had chili for dinner, and that was a concoction made of ground beef and kidney beans and tomatoes and a dollop of chili powder. And it was served over rice. cinnamon, but it was served over spaghetti. What a shock. And then I moved to New Mexico, and I discovered that chili is plain and simple. A stewed chili pods. A little salt, a little garlic, that's it. Red or green. Sometimes there's a little meat in it, but it's basically a vegetable sauce, and it's served over, well, just about anything. Enchiladas, huevos, corn chips, beans, you name it. Green chili. You may not have it here at all. New Mexicans have been eating this way for 400 years, and newcomers quickly get so addicted to this stuff that they have to take it home with them. And the college students who study out of state, like my son, they have to be sent care packages because nothing else will do. And there's nobody that New Mexicans make fun of quite so much as relentlessly as the Texans, who come expecting their chili to have kidney beans and tomatoes and beef in it. And I'm sorry to say, and I've seen this numerous times, my own eyes are rude to the waitresses who bring them what they asked for, which was a bowl of chili in New Mexico. When you move to a new place, you gotta learn the new lingo, right? When we move to a new religious community, we must likewise watch for the new language and the new definitions. So it may be that the church you came from defined a sermon as some kind of finger-shaking, guilt-producing message from the angry minister speaking for an angry God. But that is not what we do here. And that's not how we define the word sermon. So try our kind, because you might like it. And maybe that the God of your childhood was a rather clearly defined fellow with a certain personality and a particular set of desires and needs, one of which was that you better believe in him or else, right? A lot of you probably had that. And the same goes for a host of other words. You were told as children what spirituality and prayer and worship meant. Words that are important for all of our religious lives, and which we Unitarian Universalists use in a different way than most of you learned in the churches of your congregations of your childhood. We resist this all too well. There's the modern form of the angry God there. We resist this often. We use, I don't know why, acting like God and worship and prayer have only one definition, the one that we were taught and rejected, and therefore we cannot use these words anymore. And actually that's about as silly as a Texan refusing our New Mexican food because the chili doesn't have ground beef and kidney beans in it. No word is defined in the stars. All words are defined by the communities that use them. And we Unitarian Universalists are not struck by lightning by defining religious words in our own way. It's an important exercise, actually, unless we want to be perpetually religiously tongue-tied, which sometimes I think we do. Sometimes I think that helping people redefine religious terms is one of the major things that I do in my ministry. This morning I'm going to define 4 words for you. You don't have to take notes. Most of you already discovered that these are also on the handout. Worship, the consideration of things of worth. If you consulted a comprehensive dictionary, you would discover that the word worship is derived from the idea of worth. And worship is, at heart, the consideration of a worthy thing. The secular uses of the word make this clear. We talk about worshiping money, right? That is, assigning money too much worth. Occasionally in movies, you'll hear your worship. Actually, I learned in this exercise that your worship is actually an actual title used in Britain for certain officials. But what it means is, you very worthy person, your worship, your worship. So to worship then is to consider and celebrate, not just with our minds, but with our hearts and our bodies, what is worthy and meaningful and valuable and important in our lives. Participating in a good worship service leaves us feeling uplifted because we found ways to remember and honor what is worthy. Worship can be a verb, but when it is, it's a verb that does not take an object, does not need to take an object. It's a little bit like the word work. You can work wood, you can work metal, right? But you can also just work. Worship's the same way. You can worship God or you can worship money, but you can also simply worship. Your values, your loved ones, your beauty, justice, honor, peace, life. So definition number 1, worship is the consideration of things of worth. Also honoring, pondering, loving, questioning, contemplating, revering, enjoying things of worth. That's how we define the word worship in the state of Unitarian Universalism. Across the Protestant denominations, people come to worship hoping to get something new to think about, something to take home, something to guide our lives. That new nugget of wisdom is the thing of worth for Protestants. It's almost unique to Protestants, by the way. Catholic Mass, pagan rituals, Hindu ceremonies, almost all of the other religiousness of the world is focused on something completely different than learning. And that's why we have these uniquely long sermons. We Western Protestants, we like to think about things, and so that's what we do. We feel best on Sunday if we've learned something. I can always feel this little ripple of satisfaction go through the congregation when I've said something to them that they've never thought about before. Learning is one of our ways of appreciating the things of worth in our world. Considering personal or social problems and issues is just as much worship as contemplating the beauties of nature. The attitude of receptivity, which is the mood of worship, furthers our consideration. It makes it more fruitful than it otherwise might be. So you say, if this is all worship, all these things, what is it that we do on Sunday mornings together? So why do you get in your car and drive all the way across town to rush to be on time? If you can consider things of worth in your own living room, which of course you can, or taking a walk in your own neighborhood park, or at the beach or in the mountains. So what we're really talking about this morning is corporate worship, the consideration of things of worth together in a group. And although we can worship in many ways, alone or with just a few others, a worship service is a corporate experience, something we do together in a community. We do this way not because it can't be done alone, but because there's motivation in numbers, there's motivation in intention. So you could, for instance, learn to speak Spanish by turning on the Spanish TV and just sticking it out until you understood it. Or by wandering around the Spanish-speaking neighborhood and just sticking it out until you finally figured things out. But you are actually more likely to learn and learn faster and learn more competently if you take a class. Because there's this time and a set place, so you'll actually do it, and people may be relying on you. And the presence of others who are struggling with the same things is kind of comforting. We know our beginner's level and our problems with accent won't be judged too harshly in a class. We can shed our inhibitions about making mistakes or our lapses of memory, and there's a teacher present to guide our learning in class. And similarly, we come to a worship service and we do worship services, we put on worship services, not because that's the only way to worship, but because it's a school for worship and an opportunity for group practice, so to speak. There's a form there for us to slip into. And if we're comfortable, we can shed some of that psychological armor that shields us from difficulties and take on a more receptive, learning, worshipful mood. A new insight, a turn of phrase from a hymn, a story to chew over, these are the fruits of worship. And they come because this format, this specially set aside place, help us to be receptive, even vulnerable to them. The same words overheard in a busy street would probably not touch us the same way, because our everyday armor and our everyday busyness defends us from as much change as we can possibly let it do. So definition number 2 for our dictionary, common worship is the consideration of things of worth in a group setting, in a prepared space, in a structured time. I get it? I got it. The consideration of things of worth happens best in a particular psychological state, which I'm going to call worship mood. It's a psychological state that we can get into in many ways. We get into it in a worship service when we have have revered, enjoyed, loved, questioned, pondered, and considered things of worth. It's a state that allows us to do those things deeply. It's a pleasant combination of alert and relaxed and widely focused that allows us to notice what's going on within ourselves and around us. It leaves us refreshed and energized, and by the time we have spent thinking about the things we deeply care about. This state of relaxed alertness is a very pleasant one, and it's also unusual in our lives because so often when we are relaxed, we're not alert, we're vegged out, right? Finally relaxed, in front of the television, but we're not alert, really. And also, when we are alert, we are often tense about it. We're stressed, we're defended, we're ready to meet the world. So to be both relaxed and alert at the same time, we've achieved something really important. What I've called worship mood is also akin to flow that the athletes talk about, to happiness, what the Navajo called harmony. It's a feeling of safety, of home, of openness, of receptivity. It's an inner quiet as well as a purposeful energy. It's so pleasant and so rare in our lives that people regularly tell me that they find themselves tearing up as the first hymn begins, or as an amen ends the prayer, or at the shared words of the affirmation, or the beauty of the music. They tell me that they don't understand why this happens. They never cry in their everyday lives, and I tell them in return that their tears signify that something important is happening here, and it's a very good thing. Worship mood is also a state of mind produced by many kinds of meditation. It's also a tender state, which is to say, it keeps us vulnerable, open to the world and to each other, to what is welling up within us. We can't always afford to let ourselves be vulnerable to what's going on around us and inside us. It's embarrassing and distracting to well up in tears all day long, so most of us don't even think about doing that. We mostly put up our defenses when we go around our lives kind of armored, and even to what we most care about. In the comfort of worship, therefore, we can take down some of these defenses and take in something new, consider the deep, be with one another in a different kind of way. Similarly, in a safe place, laughter comes more freely. We're glad we can really sing out even though we don't think we sing very well. We can sink into a few minutes of meditation. We can let ourselves be open to new insights. The people of your congregation can trust the planners and leaders of worship such that they too can experience worship mood regularly. They will beat a path to your door because this is such a good state of mind. And they're likely to come no matter what the sermon topic or the musical style is, and they will love their church. And that gets us to the word sanctuary. The dictionary has all kinds of definitions. Sanctuary is an especially holy place, and that grates on the nerves of many youths who like to think that everything is holy, or that nothing is holy. And it grates on the nerves of most theologians who insist that any God worth the name is everywhere by definition. So we're going to skip right past the first definition of worship, of sanctuary, down to the second, which is a refuge for wildlife. Feeling wild today? A sanctuary is a safe place. It's not just a safe place. It can also be a place of meeting, a challenge, of learning. But if it is not a safe place, the rest will never happen. Now, as to what invites people into worship mood, as well as what guarantees that they will never get there, and what makes them feel safe, well, that's different for different people, right? Mainline Protestants and many UUs crave the music of an organ they have learned to associate with worship mood, the pipeboard. Back there, you can't see it, but it's back there. Others associate organs with the downside of Christianity, the pressure to believe and conform. And there's more than one UU sanctuary which was built explicitly to exclude organs. Any of you live in one of those? Stans and I live in one of those. No organs. presence of Scripture and the language of Hebrew. No doubt the ancient Druids walked towards their sacred oak forest, smelling the mosses and relaxing into worship mood. And that's going to bring us to our next topic, which is diversity. But before we put this dictionary in our backpack, let's just take a breath together and read these venerable words by Kenneth Patton, poet of humanism in the last century. Here we go. You guys read the italics. Let us worship with our eyes and our ears and our fingertips.
Let us love the world through heart and mind and body.
Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears.
Let us worship with the opening of all windows of our beings, with the full outstretching of our spirits.
Life comes with singing and laughing, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and the heart and the body, to those who have fallen in love with life.
Let us worship and let us learn to love.
So much then for the dictionary. We can turn off this app and put the phone back in its pocket, knowing that we now have 4 shared definitions to guide our work for the rest of the day. And for you to take home and ponder and share with those who create worship and participate in worship in your congregation. So, the next thing we got, our student has, our backpack-carrying college student, she's got an evening seminar, and the class of 10 had agreed that every student would take a turn bringing supper for everybody for this class. So we're going to use that supper and the dilemmas it poses as a way to think about diversity in worship. A common meal, like common worship, happens together. It gathers people who are different tastes, different beliefs, different histories, different sense of what matters, what tastes good, and what is nutritious. How does our student take into account the vegetarians, the people who can't eat soy, the ones who love Mexican foods, the ones who don't eat vegetables, all in the backpack? This is a situation that those planning worship face week after week in Unitarian Universalist congregations. There are 3 basic ways of dealing with this kind of problem, this kind of diversity problem. And whether you're eating together or worshiping together. There's the first, there is the eat what you're served approach, right? I brought it, it's good, here it is. You eat it, you don't like it, go hungry. There's one approach. There's the poll everyone in advance to see what they like and try and find a meal that will please everybody approach, right? And there's the buffet approach. So, the eat what you're served approach is not so much an approach to diversity as it is a retreat from diversity, but it's actually pretty common and sometimes appropriate. It's what happens in many families who go visit Grandma for Thanksgiving, for instance. And what does Grandma serve? Turkey, potatoes, cranberries, pumpkin pies, all this kind of stuff. There she is up there. And the kids who can't bear to eat goopy green beans, they probably have to take a taste, right? Is that what you had to do in your family? That's what we had to do in mine. They had to take a taste. And the person who would so much prefer a steak, tough luck. And the one who asks if there is by any chance tofurkey, cold stares and hurt feelings. Grandma fixed it, it's good, you eat it, or you go hungry. And the thought that some people might like other things, in some families, is treated as interesting but irrelevant to Thanksgiving. In other families, people who like oysters or enchiladas for their Thanksgiving are actually made fun of. Right? That's another approach to being who we are. Many churches operate by this same philosophy. It's Catholic Church. This is what they do because it's right and proper, and of course it's what you want to do because it's good for you, and you're a Catholic, and this is what we do. That's their approach. I've been to UU churches that operate by this principle also. King's Chapel comes to mind in Boston. They have a very unique form of worship, and if that doesn't warm your heart, they will graciously point you across the Boston Common to the Arlington Street Church, where they do it differently. I've been also to many a fellowship where what is served at the meal every week is secular humanism and that only, and other people are made fun Christmas Eve comes to mind. But if that's what happens every Sunday in your congregation, your church is not likely to thrive in this increasingly diverse world that we live in, because you will not be appealing to diverse tastes, and unlike grandma, you gotta go where else, they have choices about what they do on Sunday morning. Now, the second approach our student might take to her seminar dinner is to poll everyone in the class as to their likes and preferences, and plan a meal around that. And if it was a math class, someone might call that the common denominator approach. Figure out what everybody's gonna like. So our student discovers in her research that there are 2 vegetarians in her class, so no chicken dishes. There are several people who don't do carbs, so that takes care of pasta. One person allergic to peanuts, so okay, let's see. Okay, hummus and veggies and tomato soup and fruit. Not too bad. A little hard on the backpack, but everybody will get a meal out of that. And that'll work for one night. But in the end, this crowd of students is going to experience a pretty limited menu if everybody has to agree on everything. That's the problem with the common denominator approach. It pleases everybody, sort of, for a while. But it devolves in the end, unless considerable creativity is applied, to the lowest common denominator, and that's when things get boring. This approach also empowers those with the most limited tastes and the greatest power needs, because anybody can veto anything. So lots of busy families operate their lives this way. Families with young children who still have a commitment to family dinner. We did this when my son was young. We had no energy for fights in the evening and no energy to cook several meals. And he was a spirited little guy who was perfectly capable from the very beginning of eating nothing if he didn't like what was served. And we caved. We just caved. So Kevin's childhood, I'm a little embarrassed to say, was an endless round of tacos, spaghettis, green chili chicken stew, hamburgers, enchiladas, and pizza. And when he went off to college, we shed our tears, we really did. We came home to our empty house and we told ourselves that we could eat like grown-ups again. It was so good. By the way, the final solution to this is girlfriends.
Yeah.
But anyway, we never had the power to deal with it anyway, so we were bored. The Union Church of my childhood was very explicit about using this philosophy to decide what would go into the worship service. 1960s and 1970s, pretty big chunk of our denomination operated this way. Hymns were sung, but they were very carefully chosen, and they featured flowers and sunshine, because everybody believes in flowers and sunshine. There was no praying either, because not everybody prays in any Unitarian Universalist church. And there were no symbols used in worship, except when the children were present. The UU service committee's chalice was brought in for us because it was understood that children, unlike adults, need concrete symbols to help focus their spirituality. This was a long time ago. We never did any responsive readings in my church because someone might have to then say words that they didn't exactly believe in. In the church I served now during that era, they sang no hymns. Same reason. When I got to Albuquerque 25 years ago, the search committee said, so we want you to change the Sunday program. That's what it was called in those days, because a lot of people didn't know what worship meant. They said, the search committee said, it's just like a concert lecture show. They said, it's not. You got to do something about it. So I'll let you bask in imagination about how that went. But it went. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but how it went was that I started talking about respecting theological diversity, which, by the way, they didn't even know they had when I got there. They thought they were all humanists. They were very surprised to discover the diversity of beliefs amongst them. And I started talking about respecting the diversity that we had, not by we only do what everybody will like around here, but by using a completely different strategy. So instead of laying out the right worship service and saying, in effect, take it or leave it, or trying to please everybody all the time, I started talking about a buffet. To get back to our beleaguered student bringing dinner in her backpack to her diverse classmates, here's something else she can do. She can lay out a variety of dishes and choose what they like and avoid what they don't like. So she can put out the chicken tenders and the peanut sauce and the barbecue sauce and some cheese cubes and some hummus and vegetable dip, pita bread and apples and cookies, and let the individuals in her class pick and choose freely what they're going to like. It's a little more work, and she'll have a few more leftovers, but really that tomato soup was going to be a disaster in the end. And how does a good guest behave at a buffet? Well, he takes what he likes. He might even take something he's never tried before, just as an experiment. He leaves what he knows he doesn't like or can't eat, and he makes a meal. So do his classmates, who are all different from him. Nobody expects anybody to try everything or like everything. And the only thing that's really frowned on at a buffet is making snide comments about the things that other people like to eat. Totally gross. In Albuquerque, and perhaps in some of your congregations, we offer a worship buffet over the weeks. We have classical music a couple Sundays a month and contemporary music a couple of Sundays a month. And there's more crossover than you might think in those two categories. When people complain, and we have people who have this funny thing, they see an electronic drum set on the platform and they start to complain. And here's where it's really helpful to have a very explicit and widely owned theology of diversity in use. Because they complain, and I say with a smile, well, people like different things, you know? You'll get your turn next week. And they smile back, because they know that that's the theory in use. We pray every week, and we're quite clear that if that's not your cup of tea, you can just zone out for 2 minutes, only 2 minutes out of the 60, not too burdensome. Right? And we meditate also every week. Same thing. You don't want to do it, don't do it. Just sit there, read the hymnal, whatever. Sometimes we do guided meditations. Sometimes we even do walking meditation. Sometimes we add candles to the mix, or rocks, or water, whatever. And some people just sit in the chairs and don't participate in those things, and that's fine. These things all touch some people deeply, and they bore others, and none of it lasts very long, and they're interesting things to read in the hymnal, and good music going on during most of the time. We rotate about a dozen affirmations through our worship service over the week because we know that no one is perfect for everybody. And we invite people to think of these not as literal things that they have to believe exactly what it says, but rather as kind of generally helpful things that a word or two might speak to them. Sometimes our newest UUs ask us questions about these affirmations, but the only long-term complaints that we get come from UUs who've come to us after being a part of a congregation that used one of those other two methods of dealing with diversity, and schooled these folks in thinking that they should never hear anything that doesn't appeal to them. But if we help them understand that with 800 people here, it would never work that way, usually they can kind of get with the program. As our college student packs up her dinner offering for her seminar, therefore, I invite you to think about the theory of diversity in use in your congregation. Diversity in theology, diversity in music, diversity in language, diversity in style. I invite you to discuss this with your leadership and to be explicit about the kind of diversity that you are offering. Confusion about the ways to honor different theologies and different styles is one of the greatest sources of conflict in our congregations. Okay, so much for dinner. So here's the third thing our college student is going to put in her backpack: a pen. There's all kinds of pens in the world. The ink and quill kind, all the way through fountain pens with cartridges to ballpoints and these newfangled gel inks and their dazzling colors. Our student takes her pen very seriously. cartridges is a big hassle. You have to use it carefully, and you have to have it in order for your handwriting to be legible. And actually, she feels that these challenges are good for her. The stationery store where she gets her cartridges is in a neighborhood she'd never otherwise go to. Remembering to take it out of her purse before she flies reminds her of her dad in a way that's become important to her. Writing carefully, she feels, is a good discipline. And her odd pen is a conversation opener. It helps her make friends. Her pen is a balance for her of comfort and challenge. Effective worship also continually balances the comfortable and the challenging. And that's a really important balance to have. Because all comfort is pablum. People won't waste their time after a while if they don't get any new thing, any challenge, any challenge in their life. On the other hand, all challenge is like too much. People leave feeling irritated or unfed. Now, my experience with Unitarian Universalists, both lay and ordained, who are planning worship, is they tend to offer too much challenge. For people to drop into that worship mood, which, if you remember, is kind of our goal here. We tend to pile on challenge after challenge. As a matter of fact, the prophetic sermon, unfamiliar hymns, a poem that a professor would devote an entire class to, read, and just out it goes. A sound system that's not up to the task, which is not what we have here, by the way. This is working beautifully. All in 1 hour. Tired already? Right. So a good worship service, wherever it's held, is comfortable and comforting enough so that people can relax into worship mood. And in that state of being, can open their minds and hearts and bodies to some challenge, to something new, to something they wish they didn't have to think about, to something they might need to change in their lives. And the longer people do worship in a particular way and in a particular place with particular leaders, particular sounds and smells and rituals, the more the service, the reflections on the ordeal that most of you here went through last year were offered in a voice that was familiar to some of you. What I had to say, on the other hand, I imagine seemed pretty challenging, so I left it to the end. Hopefully, by the time you heard it, you felt like you were ready to hear something new. So worship is a matter of both form and content. Although this isn't the only way to do this, in Albuquerque we tend to focus our form on comfort and our message on challenge. For that reason, we regularly use one of the two orders of service and only rarely deviate from them, either the contemporary or the traditional. Each has a standard order of elements in the service, and one song, the doxology in the traditional service and Spirit of Life in the contemporary service, is sung every single week. Our hope is that, knowing more or less how things will go, and that they will know at least one song, people will more easily sink into their chairs and relax in the traditional service, or allow themselves to be engaged, body, mind, and voice, in the music of the contemporary service. So here's how comfort and challenge enters into our thinking about worship practices. We know that in a worship service that has upwards of 200 people, it's not going to feel like a family or a group of friends. So we wait until at least halfway through the service before we invite people to greet each other. Because that gives people time to get comfortable before we ask them to do a kind of challenging thing, challenging for many people to turn around and say good morning to the folks around them who they probably don't know. In a smaller congregation, on the other hand, knowing who is in the room with you, with the 20 or 30 other people, is really important. That's a part of the comfort then. And therefore, in that congregation, the better practice would be greeting the people around you as a part of what happens very early on in the service, because that's the way we say, okay, these are good people, I can relax here, I can let down my defenses. When we have guest preachers, the congregation has the challenge of getting used to a new person, and so we keep the rest of the service very comfortable. When we're doing something unusual, like inviting people to do a walking meditation through the church garden during the meditation time, the job of the sermon becomes to offer comfort. We don't walk around the meditation garden as part of the worship service and challenge people to go out and change the world, all on the same Sunday. It's too much. We add comfort by training everyone involved in the worship service to project confidence and to smile. We add comfort by sticking to the assigned times. We start on time, we end with a meal. We tell people if there's something going to be changing about that so that they don't worry about it. Challenge usually comes from the message, but sometimes it comes from the meditation or other words, sometimes from unfamiliar music. We manage that too. You probably all been to a worship service where the worship leader carefully chose 3 hymns to exactly match the themes. 3 hymns, none of which you knew. Right? And how did you feel about that? You kind of go away, unless you're a really good sight reader, you go away feeling kind of irritated. And since actually a few people are good enough sight readers to sight read 3 hymns and sing with gusto a song they don't know, even you were probably not very satisfied with the result. In Albuquerque, we work hard to manage challenge. We often precede our service with a rehearsal of new music, which is what I'm going to do right now. This is our children's favorite opening hymn. Their parents have told me they hear it singing in the bathtub. Don't you want to learn a song and sing it with your congregation that the children would sing in the bathtub? Okay, it's number 367 in your hymn books, which are in front of you. And I've got, here he comes. Got Ben in your back. Thank you, Ben. He's indulging me mindfully staying this long. So the deal here, this is a low voice, high voice alternating song, right? So you can decide whether you feel like you're a low voice or a high voice, and we'll sing it together. So let's these low voices practice this once. Okay, ready? Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Ladies and readers. Oh, you know this? How many people know this? Oh, well, let's keep on practicing. Okay, guys, second hallelujah now. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Ladies, sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Okay, in higher voices, you sound like you got it. Okay? Now, this is why the children sing this in the bathtub. Okay? So the deal is that when you are singing, you're standing up. When someone else is singing, you are sitting down. Okay? So get your knees limbered up and put on your thinking caps. Then we'll sing it a couple, 3 times because I guarantee you're going to mess up the first time. Okay, man, on your feet. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Stand up. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. no one holy instrument ordained by the Almighty to lift the soul and approach the Spirit, not a one. And there is no instrument, not even the drum set, that is the work of the devil. Right? Okay. So if we take the groundless approach to music, that the only music fit for worship comes from the organ or is in a classical genre, a lot of people will be happy because that's their fountain pen. Just as the style gives them good memories, comfortably fits in their ear, helps them live a better life. But for other people, that kind of music gives them the feeling of being outsiders, of being outclassed, of them not fitting in and not understanding, and that kind of worship is not speaking to their lives. And just to get back to the theme of the homily this morning, this latter group is getting bigger and bigger. Because besides all those other storms that's breaking over us, there was that storm called No Child Left Behind, and the storm called Soccer Mania, a world, in other words, of only a few children getting a musical education. So most young and middle-aged adults do not know how to read music, and they don't know much about organs or chamber music, because it was not a part of their growing up education like it was so many of ours. The group of people who are going to become religious liberals next year aren't like you when you were 35 years old. They're different. And if we want our church to be a part of their world and they to be a part of our congregations, we have to try out their music. Furthermore, those who grew up, as many of you did, in conservative Christian churches, are all too often unlike you, growing up in one of those mega churches which has used contemporary music as their worship language for a generation. For these young adults, the essence of worship mood starts with the beat of a drum. When they have a change of mind and heart and decide they don't believe any of this anymore, they, as most of us did at some point, their experience of church was good enough that they want to find something else, and they come looking for some place where they can believe what seems right to them. And they hear us speaking only the musical language of Germanic hymn tunes played on 19th century organs, as if that's the only language in the world. How long are they going to stay? They don't have the associations with it that we brought to it when we came. So I know you want Unitarian Universalism to survive and serve people who will want to be spiritual but not orthodox for generations to come. And I hear you wail to me, but I hate it, and it's just not worshipful, and I sympathize. I do. I'm a classically trained musician myself. There is nothing I enjoy better on Sunday morning than singing the alto part of the hymn. But since what is worshipful is written in our hearts by experience, not in the stars or by God, musical diversity really is possible. And when contemporary music is well done, volume controlled, and carefully chosen, when you use your help to understand the importance of meeting the best of the popular culture of the 21st century in the same way that Mr. Bach himself met the best of 16th century culture in his day, most UUs can come to a place where the beat of the drum sets them into worship mood too. Really. It can happen. Ethnic and racial and class diversity is something UUs say they long for. And as I'm sure you know, the demographic that most of us fit into, white Anglo, is shrinking overall. So we need diversity. No matter how much we have wanted this, however, it is proven to be elusive in most places. But if you visit in Albuquerque with a discerning eye, you will notice what a diverse congregation it is. We're age diverse. It's easy to find people from about age 25 in every decade of life. There are plenty of people with gray hair, but it's not another congregation by any means. And while we don't have as much ethnic diversity as our diverse city does, there's enough in our church that it does not look like there's an invisible sign on the door that says white only, as in so many of our places look like. There are plenty of other kinds of diversity as well. Sexual orientation, economic situation, even education levels. And it's hard to know exactly why we're so blessed with this diversity, but I think that the diversity of musical styles and worship has had a lot to do with it, diversity comes not because we focused on it in any way. It came to us as the age of the congregation started to come down. When 20-somethings and 30-somethings start coming to your congregation, they come as diverse as their generation is, which is a lot more diverse than the generation of 70-year-olds. It would be possible to drive that diversity off with excessive shows of white privilege or even out-and-out racism, I'm sure, but we have managed so far not to do that. Attract younger generations and you will break the color barrier because they've broken the color barrier. Attract the younger generation by learning to find their music as spiritual as you find yours. Now here's the cool thing about worship movement. It's a mental place. It's a pattern of firing neurons that they can see in MRIs and all that kind of thing. It's quite distinctive. It's a place you learn to get to using, among other things, external cues like music. And that's why change is hard in congregations, because change disrupts those accustomed cues. Nothing in worship feels very good the first time you try it. Will you repeat after me? Nothing in worship feels very good the first time you try it. But that's also why change is possible. Because if you try it a few more times and kind of work with it, pretty soon your brain will have absorbed a new set of cues. And so here we have, when we try something really outrageous, or when we're going to try something for a while, kind of try new patterns, we just say or put in the order search something like that. We're trying it, don't panic. Just try it. And if you don't, and later, in a few months, because tomorrow you're still going to hate it. But 3 months from now, you're going to start kind of liking it. It's going to start feeling good. So, back to our college student and her tricky fountain pen. One of the reasons she uses it, remember, is because its quality and its history and even its trickiness signals to her that what she's writing is important, worthy of the trouble that it takes to use her precious pen. Great worship is a holistic experience, signaled by many small things that add up to a message that says, this is important. Relax. Go inside. Pay attention. Keep an open mind to a new message and an open heart for a new feeling. We sometimes have a lot of trouble with this. We must mistake taking things seriously with taking them literally. Because since we don't take things literally, we want to make sure people know that we're not going to take things literally. We feel like we have to schlep through worship just to prove that it's not, that we don't take things literally, but that is signaling that it's not important, and that's not what we wanted to do. Or maybe we're so confident that we can stimulate people's minds with a good argument, but changing their hearts or touching their spirits, that feels too scary or too hard to do. Anyway, in an awful lot of places, we don't pay enough attention to the details of the worship space to give out the message that what we're doing is important. I've spoken elsewhere about my first church, which had purchased a chapel from the Episcopal Diocese, very traditional looking little chapel for this very humanist little group. And they gleefully unbolted all the pews and arranged them in a semicircle, which was fine. They called it an unscrewing party. By the time I got there 3 years later, they were also storing their extension ladder in the back pew, which they never used because they weren't big enough, you know. And there was still scenery from the last play reading service behind the pulpit on my candidate Sunday. When I asked about it, they claimed that they didn't see it. And anyway, what was important was hearing me, they said. So this is an extreme example, but it's not unbelievable, is it? So I want to give you a few minutes to gather as best you can. I know that it's a little challenging in this space, but find 3 or 4 people right around you, behind you, or beside you, or in front of you, and have a little conversation and about the things that you think happen in your congregation that would signify to a worshiper, this is important. You have a sheet on your handouts that you can make notes if you want to. this, but I can see the term paper. It's about the difference between a sermon and a lecture. So you'll notice that while virtually all you use believe that the most important part of the worship service is the sermon, we have not actually talked about sermons this morning. Ministers have lots of theories about what makes for a good sermon, and virtually all ministers believe that they are pretty good preachers. So, okay, that's done. But in most of our churches, there are a fair number of Sundays each year in which the minister or the ministers are not in the pulpit. And the pulpit is filled by a guest or a layperson. In churches with only one minister, that minister commonly preaches and plans worship 33 times a year, which leaves a lot of the year for non-professionals. When we have guest speakers in Albuquerque, we send them a cheat sheet that comes right out of the student's term paper. We don't have time to read the whole term paper, but here are the bullet points, and they're duplicated in your handout, so I'm not even going to read them to you because I know how much you want to get to lunch. But they're there. And they basically say to the speakers, all of our speakers are chosen, almost all, because people have heard them give good lectures. But a good lecture in a worship service is an uneasy thing. It doesn't fit in the end if you're hearing good preaching, because really a lecture and a sermon are two different critters. And if you're in school to expect one kind of critter and all of a sudden you get a lecture, it doesn't feel good. So what we do is help our good speakers think about, and we tell them about, because most people didn't learn in university how to preach a sermon. They learned how to lecture a lecture. And most of us have only heard lectures who are not church people. And we don't know, what is this sermon thing? And so we do the best we can, and it doesn't quite fit, and everybody knows it, and it's sort of uneasy. So we have started to orient our guest speakers to the difference between a sermon and a lecture. And we don't force this on them. If they're going to insist on lecturing, then I guess that's what they're going to do, and they probably won't be invited back. But a lot of them take this cheat sheet and say, oh, well, actually, I can do a few interesting things in this sermon to you that I couldn't do in my class, or I couldn't do talking to the ACLU, and we couldn't do in the things that I learned in Toastmasters how to do. So I'm going to try and do something new. So I offer that cheat sheet to you to modify to make it work in your congregation, and also add things that work for you, like exactly how long you want them to speak and all that kind of stuff. That's it. So now we have a backpack. It's all packed up. It's got your term paper in it. It's got your supper for a diverse group of people, your beloved fountain pen, and your dictionary. So I hope you will find this set of tools useful for you to take home, and begin to talk with those who create worship in your congregation about what you've learned today. Good worship starts with a theology of worship, of consideration of things of worth, and not just considering by the brain, but with the heart's feelings and the body's wisdom. One of the great things of worth in our lives together is the wholeness that we all are. Great worship is facilitated by a shared understanding of how we will handle diversity in our congregation. Diversity of theology, taste, of learning styles. Each of the three paradigms I offered has its pros and cons. In Albuquerque, we've opted for the most complex form, that buffet form, and we've taught people to expect that they will regularly hear and say and do things that don't quite fit for them, and so will everybody else, and that's okay. I believe that because we have learned to deal with that kind of complexity, our congregation is thriving and diverse. Great worship pays attention to the balance of comfort and challenge that the congregation is experiencing. So the congregation can come to trust its worship leaders, including its lay worship leaders, enough to sink into that open and receptive mood that is the major goal of worship. And finally, great worship includes great preaching, and there's a difference between a sermon and a lecture, which needs constant tending to, even by ministers. Frederick May Elliott, long president of the American Unitarian Association, said this: worship is the deliberate attempt, through the use of familiar and beloved words and acts, to get a firm grasp on the values which have come to seem of central importance in our lives. Want to hear that again? Worship is the deliberate attempt, through the use of familiar and beloved words and acts, to get a firm grasp on the values which have come to seem of central importance to our lives. And a child once said about a worship service, well, it's pretty in there, and kind of quiet, and it makes you feel bigger than you really are. That's the result of being able to drop into the mood of worship and the consideration of things of work, whether they be new ideas or a larger or just community. Our world may not have does not have enough institutions devoted to social justice, but it has an awful lot. There are many places where children can get a moral education and a variety of opportunities available to us to create community in our lives. But only religious institutions involve themselves in creating and offering opportunities for corporate worship. It's something we should try very hard to do in a way that has integrity, equality, and speaks for religious liberalism across the human spectrum. If we do that, we will thrive in difficult times, and we will have the satisfaction of seeing our values and our beloved Unitarian Universalism live on beyond us. So I invite you to take these backpacks home and unpack them with some other worship leaders in your congregation and adapt them to your setting and your size and your people and their history and their tastes and their theology. It's important work, and I bless you in it. Namaste.